Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So today we're going to do a little bit of a mashup episode. This is obviously going to be a book review on the book You Have the Right to Remain Innocent by James Duane. But I also want to, in the service of discussing the content of the book, kind of want to give some expanded thoughts on what the role is of police and what your rights are when you're talking to police and what you should be expecting when the police want to speak to you and why they want to speak to you and what you really should be doing when that situation occurs, if it occurs. I hope none of you have to ever talk to cops that you don't want to speak to. But to start off, I want to kind of clarify what the job of a police person, man, woman, whatever, is. And there is this mistaken notion, probably not amongst anybody listening to this, but in the just general society at large, that the police exist to stop crime from happening. And that is categorically not true. Very, very rarely do police ever stop a crime that is happening. I mean, you would have to be in the right place at the right time and have a police officer who is willing to actually put themselves in harm's way to stop a crime, which, legally speaking, they do not have to do. No cop has to endanger themselves to stop a crime that is going on. So, first off, that's really not their job. The whole to protect and to serve thing, really kind of bullshit. What police do is they come by after a crime has been committed. You call 911, you say, somebody broke into my house, or somebody stole my car, or somebody beat me up, or whatever it is that happened. The police then come to you, they take a report, they talk to you, maybe they take photographs, maybe they take evidence, and then they go back to the police station and they start trying to figure out, okay, who did this? How do we find this person? Basically, they kind of back clean up. Like, they're not there to stop the crime from happening. They're there to try to figure out who did the crime. And then once that's figured out, then it gets handed off to the criminal justice side of things. It's like watching an episode of Law & Order. Like, everybody's watching an episode of Law & Order. Every episode starts with a crime has been committed. And usually the crime was not prevented by the police. The police show up after the fact to do the forensics, take the statements, and then try to piece together evidence. And then once they have a suspect, then they hand off the suspect and all the evidence to the order side of things, and that's when the trial happens and somebody's either convicted or they're not convicted, and then they're sentenced, and then we just go from there. So, understand that when the police want to speak to you, it's for either one of two reasons. A, you're a victim of a crime and you've called them to come speak to you, or they think you are a criminal and are speaking to you in order to ascertain that you are what they think you are. Like, cops don't call you around to just, like, shoot the shit. They're not your friends, which is another thing that's very, very important to understand. These people are not your friends. They're not here to help you. They are here to solve a crime. And if they are speaking to you and you are not the victim of said crime, they think you either did the crime or you know who did. So, once you understand that, now you can internalize that and start to understand how you need to conduct yourself when speaking to police. And understand that they're not trying to get you to kind of, like, exonerate you. They're not trying to, like, get you off the hook. They're not trying to find out that you're innocent of something. They're trying to figure out if you're guilty of something. And basically, they're trying to, in their own way, confirm a confirmation bias that they have. Because, like I said, if they are speaking to you, they think you've committed a crime. So right off the bat, they already think you are guilty of something. And so their questions are engineered in such a way to try to get you to admit to the thing that they already in their minds think that you did. So, that bearing in mind, in this book, there are several examples of people who have managed to talk themselves right into prison cells because they did not follow the absolute first fundamental rule, which is the basis of this whole book, which is do not talk to cops. At least not without a lawyer present. But do not talk to cops. They are not here to help you. And it's something that I'm sure everybody who's listening to this already understands conceptually in your head, like, okay, you don't talk to cops because that's a bad idea. Reading this book and seeing how innocent people, and every example in this book is examples of people who were innocent of the crimes that they were eventually convicted of and sent to prison for. Like, these are people that did time for crimes that they did not commit. But they were convicted based on the fact that they kept talking and talking and talking under the guise of trying to be helpful to the police, because it's one of those things where if you think that you're innocent, or you know for a fact that you're innocent, there is a false security in that, in thinking that, well, I did not do this crime, so there's no harm in me talking to the police, there's no harm in me trying to be helpful and try to tell them maybe what I saw or what I didn't see, or answering their questions in any way other than I want my lawyer. Now, this will get you fucked up, because again, these are not people who are looking to exonerate you. They are looking for evidence that you committed the crime that they already think that you committed. So, being innocent of a crime and knowing that you're innocent of a crime leads you to this kind of false sense of security in speaking to the police. And that's actually when you need to be the most careful. Like, if you committed a crime and you know the cops already think you committed a crime and you actually did commit a crime, you're kind of on the same page. Like, they're not wrong. If the cops think you committed a crime and you did not, you're already not on the same page. They're already looking at you as something that you are not. So the best stance is always, obviously, to not speak to them. But it's very educational to read this book and to see just how fast it can happen to you. And how much your words can be twisted by police, not only during an interrogation, but if this does end up going to court. Because obviously, if you are charged with a crime, you're brought to court, you're going to testify probably. So is the cop that questions you. And if there is a discrepancy about what was or was not said, and for what it's worth, the vast majority of interrogations are not taped for audio. So the only records that really are going to exist are the police officer's notes and their memory. So if you're in a situation where you're on trial, you're saying that I didn't say thing A, and the police officer saying you did say thing A, guess who a jury's going to believe? It ain't going to be you. It's going to be the cops. So that's one where there's a couple different cases like that in this book, where things that were said during an interrogation got either misremembered, misquoted, be it deliberately or accidentally. Words got twisted around. Things were taken out of context to sound ways in which they weren't meant. And those statements helped to convict these people and send them to prison for crimes that they did not commit. And it's gut-wrenching to read these stories, because you know these people thought they were doing the right thing by trying to help the police, and they basically fucked themselves over because they didn't understand what it was that was really going on when the police were interrogating them. So the other thing that's in this book that is very interesting is the idea that if you are in a situation where you are being taken in, you're being questioned, that you should not plead the Fifth, but instead you should plead the Sixth. Now, obviously, everybody knows what the Fifth Amendment is the right to not incriminate yourself. The Sixth Amendment, as far as this is pertaining to. There's a lot of different things in that amendment, but the Sixth Amendment touches on the right to have an attorney present to represent you. Now, the reason Duane points this out is that it has become, sadly, kind of a standard, and he points out a lot of Scalia's work on this, and also specifically the Salinas versus Texas case, which states that if somebody refuses to speak to the police, invokes their Fifth Amendment right, which is their constitutional right to do, that in and of itself can be construed as an admission of guilt of a crime. Like, refusing to speak to the police can be construed as you are guilty of the crime. And that the obviously, like I've already said, very misguided notion that if you are an innocent person, you should have no reason to not speak to the police, which I think we've already pretty much gone over that and how that is patently false. And even if you did feel that way, it's still your Fifth Amendment right to not speak to the police, whether you're innocent or guilty. It's your constitutional right to not speak to them. Like, you are not compelled to speak to them. But under the current legal environment right now, that can be construed as admission of guilt, like just guilt by not saying anything. So that's why he recommends to, instead of invoking the Fifth, to invoke the Sixth, basically to say, I want my lawyer, which I can agree with the point that he's making, especially given the rationale for why he feels the way he does. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with invoking both amendments. Like, invoke the Fifth and invoke the Sixth. Why not? Just invoke all of them. I don't care. But yeah, it's kind of, it's scary. And it's one of those things where, again, the whole idea of all of this is that your innocence will set you free, and it will not. You actually being innocent of a crime is no guarantee in any way, shape, or form that you will not be convicted with said crime and that you will not do prison time for said crime. So you have to be very, very careful when speaking to police. It's just, and it sucks that it's that way. But that is how it is, and it's very important, I think, for everybody to educate themselves on how you should speak to the police and what you should say to the police before you find yourself, God forbid, in the situation where you have to speak to the police, where they are questioning you because they think that you've committed a crime. So that's a reason why I think it's really very, very important for everybody to read this book. I know he also has lectures on YouTube if you prefer to watch YouTube videos versus reading a book. I know this is also available via audiobook if that's more your jam. But this is one of those books that is very, very important, I think, for everybody to read and internalize the message that the book is trying to convey, because like I said, it's important to know this kind of information before you're in a situation where you need to know this kind of information. You know what I'm saying? Like, once you're in the interrogation room, you're kind of fucked. Like, if you don't already know this information, you might screw up and you might say something and you might just keep talking because you think that you're being a helpful citizen and that because you're innocent, everything will turn out hunky-dory, and it very well may not. And it's important to know that. But before we leave out of this, I do want to talk about something that I think is something that at this point is kind of just such a part of pop culture, it's almost background noise, but that is the Miranda warning. And I want to talk about it because in that Miranda warning, which now every cop has to say to somebody when they are being arrested, you have to read them this list of rights. And it's one of those where like everybody knows the words, but we don't ever really think about the words anymore. So I want to go ahead and actually read the whole like Miranda card to you that every cop has to read to people when they're being apprehended. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions. You have the right to have a lawyer with you during questioning. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed to you before any questioning if you wish. If you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you have the right to stop answering at any time. Now, let's go through this line by line because they're basically legally obliged to tell you about your Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights and when you should be invoking them. Starting here, you have the right to remain silent. You have Fifth Amendment rights. Anything you say can be used against you in court. They are point blank telling you that from that point on, anything you say can be used against you. Listen to them when they're telling you that. They're not fucking kidding. They will use anything that you say past that point against you in court if it ends up getting that far. You have the right to ask a lawyer for advice. Again, there's your Sixth Amendment, that you can ask for a lawyer. If you cannot afford a lawyer, we will appoint one for you, if you wish. There you go. If you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you have the right to stop answering at any time. Basically, if you screw up and you start answering questions and you remember, oh shit, this is a bad idea, you can stop talking at any time. Remember that. You do not have to keep talking because once you're in that interrogation room, they will tell you all manner of crazy shit to get you to talk and to get you to keep talking. Like, I know it gets dramatized a lot in movies and television, but I mean, it's true. And again, it goes back to understanding what the police officer's job is, and that is to get the information from you that they want to get from you in order to charge you with a crime. And they will resort to all kinds of nasty, dirty, sneaky topics and tricks to make that happen. Understand that. They are not your friends. They are there to do a job. And their job is to try to charge you with a crime. So, once you know that, once you understand that, now you can start to understand why you need to shut the fuck up when they're trying to question you. Ask for your lawyer, and you don't have to be ugly about it. You don't have to be mean about it, but just make it clearly known that I am not speaking to you without my lawyer present, and then shut up. Stop talking. Do not talk anymore after that point until your lawyer shows up and tells you whether or not it's a good idea to speak and what you should say, and most definitely what you should not be saying. So, yeah. And like I said, and I will keep harping on this because I do think it's important that it's information that you need to have before you find yourself in that situation. So I do highly recommend this book. It's not a long book. And like I said, you can get this information in various formats that just whatever works out best for you. Personally, I like reading paper books, but I mean, you can get this as digital copy. You can watch the YouTube lectures. You can get this on audiobook. You can get this whatever format best works for you personally. But like I said, read it, understand it, really absorb the lessons that Duane is trying to tell you so that if the day comes for you, you know what to do and you don't accidentally get yourself jammed up and you don't accidentally fuck yourself up and then you end up in this bizarre situation where you're innocent and you know you're innocent, but everything that you said is being used against you and is being twisted, and then you end up going to prison for a crime that you didn't commit. Whereas if you would have just not said anything, just shut up, you would have been better. You'd have been fine. Even given the current environment of if somebody refuses to speak, that means they're guilty of something. I still think it's better to take the chance to not speak at all and have somebody possibly think that than it is to keep talking and to give the police the ammunition that they need to say, oh, well, he said he was over here at this time and it wasn't this time, it was 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after, or he said this or that or whatever. Anything that can be used against you, that can be construed as showing that you are some kind of liar, I think it is best to say nothing than it is to accidentally convict yourself of a crime that you didn't commit. You know what I'm saying? So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you did like this, and you did make it this far. Thank you. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.